Sue tries the doors, but they're not shut.
What? Why?
It's not time.
Why not?
Alice recognizes
She just walked through. If you can't save her, then why are you here?
Alice begins to melt and ends up sitting against the operating room doors. Sue goes to her.
I know you're worried about your baby, but we came here to see ours.
You weren't supposed to come for me.
There's some things you need to know.
Sue offers Alice a hand, and Alice accepts it, standing and moving back to the chair she was initially seated in.
Right now, we're not exactly in mortality.
But it's not the afterlife either. We're in kind of an interjacent.
Time doesn't work the same here.
You mean,
Everything going on from mortals is slowed down, or we'd sped up, and things are not moving nearly as fast as in mortality as we are moving right now.
she's not in the same place we are?
You've been allowed to be here in an interjacence while your body is still unconscious in there.
That means no one can see you, and you can't communicate with anyone until you leave this interjacence.
Why isn't my baby in here too, while her body is in there?
We can only commune with those who have died.
So I am dead.
Because of the second hemorrhage, your heart stopped on the operating table. Your spirit left your body. That's why we were trying to explain earlier. You died. But they were able to stop the bleeding, restart your heart, and finish the surgery. So now it's safely in remission.
My body is alive and asleep in there.
And your spirit is still in limbo in here.
My baby hasn't died.
No, she's in surgery fighting for her life as we speak, but her heart is still beating.
And because we're in an interjacence, the surgery is going really, really slow.
To us, yes.
To her, no.
So then how do I get out?
We were sent here on a mission.
To tell you 6 stories.
Seriously?
You won't be allowed to leave until you've heard them.
And learn the lesson later.
Why?
You're all making it sound like some sort of business trip. We wanted to come visit you.
We sure love you.
Besides, you're not the only mother wanting to give her baby some advice.
But what if I don't want?
Who's in charge? Who's in charge? Oh, come on. I've only been gone a few years. You can't expect me to believe you forgot. Who's in charge?
God is in charge.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who was that?
God is in charge.
And he'll
Never leave me comfortless. Grandma,
Alice rests her elbow to her knees and rubs her eyes.
So you're telling me that God trapped me in here with my grandmas because he's trying to teach me a lesson? While my baby's life hangs in the balance?
We also just make great company if you hadn't noticed.
Granny.
Why, you?
We've seen many of the things you're seeing, but just with a bit more perspective now. And your mother would have made a fine addition to the discussion as well, had she not been alive.
Is she here at the hospital?
She's in the lobby with Riley under that.
Oh, my word, Riley. He must be losing it right now.
He's not alone either.
This must be killing him.
All the more reason to get on with these stories.
So I listen to the stories, I leave, and you save my baby. She doesn't die?
We are as unsure as you are about the future of you and your baby.
But you can at least allow us to take your mind off it for a while.
Sue puts her arm around Alice and squeezes her. Alice leans into her.
It doesn't sound like I have a choice.
You'll listen?
I guess.
You won't regret it.
Alice sits back, still tense but listening.
Excellent.
The grandmothers settle in. Sue sits arm in arm with Alice. Ada sits closest to the operating room doors.
First, let's have a grandmother review. I introduced Frances and Edith, my mother and grandmother respectively. This is Edith's mother, Ada. Ada's mother is Elizabeth Barnes Stockholm, and Elizabeth's mother is Joanna McGregor Barnes.
I bet you wrap your mind around it.
You all must be
Oh, Franny.
Old! We were all thinking it.
We were born a fair amount of time ago.
Really not that long.
I was born in 1952.
1933.
1900.
1877.
1847. And 1823.
Joanna, you're
200 years young.
What else? Her stories first.
the 6 stories are about each of you?
Joanna's the best place to start, because without her,
No, you couldn't tell. She's not exactly from around here.
I was born in Glasgow, Scotland, but I set sail in 1842, the last time I'd ever seen the North when I was 11.
And you left because?
Because I followed the truth, and it helped a fine beau was on board.
Enter Christopher, a handsome man in his early 30s dressed in Victorian-era clothing. He's not wealthy, but he is charming and holds himself upright. Joanna turns and speaks towards him.
Granted, we didn't know each other till I boarded, but the second I saw him, I knew I'd no longer be missing from more, for they were in his eyes.
The set darkens as Christopher offers his hand, and the two begin to dance Viennese waltz to beautiful music. The set transforms into Nauvoo, Illinois, 1842. Joanna and Christopher stop dancing as Joanna continues to narrate, and Christopher prepares for the scene.
The missionaries had brought Christ's gospel to Glasgow in 1840, and though I wanted to be baptized, my mom did not approve. The Mormons are evil, she says. They'll drag you to hell with them. It was difficult leaving my family and everything I knew, but Jesus had spoken to me, and I couldn't look back.
Joanna links arm in arm with Christopher and begins strolling, but she still addresses Alice.
Christopher and I courted once we arrived in Nauvoo, and were married by the prophet himself in November of 1843. I was the happiest I'd ever been, to be promised to my Christopher forever, but that season was not meant to last. And in July, just months from our first being born, Joseph Smith was killed in that fall. Our child was still born. Tensions were so high, we knew we couldn't be safe for long. It was just a question of what God had in store for us next.
Joanna melts into the scene around her and begins conversing with Christopher. He has a Cockney British accent.
They're talking about leaving the country.
We've already done that once.
Looks like the Yanks are as friendly as the Brits.
To where then? Canada? Mexico? China?
I wouldn't mind learning a bit of Chinese, would you?
I'd do anything to be safe, Christopher. Anything that would allow us to raise our family in the gospel and peace.
Ah, so you wouldn't do anything to be safe.
I would do anything.
You would do anything to be safe unless it meant giving up the gospel.
Safety is in the gospel, Christopher. A life deliberately devoid of the Savior and his teachings, it would be the most dangerous, most tragic of lives to lead.
I could almost agree.
What?
I can only imagine one other thing being nearly as horrible.
What's that?
A life devoid of you.
They stop walking as Christopher gently kisses Joanna on the forehead. They then separate and Christopher exits as the set changes into the Mormon Pioneer Trail of 1847. Joanna is now pregnant as Christopher re-enters with a horse-drawn wagon. Meanwhile, Edith dons a pioneer apron and sets up a tent outside the wagon. Joanna is again addressing Alice.
3 years later, we immigrated to a new land that not one of us had seen. The journey was long, what with the walking, the heat, the walking, blisters, the walking. Of course, there is one surefire way to get off your feet, Florida.
Joanna enters the tent, where Edith, midwife, is already hidden and begins to make the sounds of labor pains. Christopher paces madly outside.
Joanna, you're almost there. Come now, just a push or two more. The head! I see the head!
Soon the cry of a newborn baby is heard, and Christopher drops to his knees in relief and offers a silent prayer of gratitude. When Edith exits, Christopher stands and makes his way into the tent. Elizabeth enters and addresses Alice.
Mom always said I was too impatient to be born in the valley, that I wanted to hear President Young when he told us we made it to Zion, and that I did.
The once opaque tent is backlit to reveal the silhouette of Joanna and Christopher cuddled up and rocking their newborn baby. Elizabeth steps back to watch, and the set is slowly taken back to return to the hospital waiting room we began in. Joanna, Elizabeth, and all the other women return to where they stood/sat before the flashback happened.
You gave birth on the plains?
Indeed, I did.
But your first baby, you said you lost it?
She was beautiful. Had the reddest head of hair ever seen in a baby.
Why did it happen?
The midwife told me it was from stress, losing my leader. If they could kill him, what would they do to us? I needed to know what would happen before it did. I couldn't take the uncertainty. Perhaps it is why we lost her.
No, Joanna.
Who's to say?
You're as much to blame as any of us were for ours.
Yours?
I had 2 of my own, but neither made it to term like Joanna's. I miscarried each before most people knew they were coming.
I miscarried my 4th.
I miscarried once and delivered 2 stillborn.
It's not something spoken of in polite conversation.
But it happens, and it can be devastating. You all lost babies?
Most of us.
This is not helping. You're telling me that this is inevitable? I'm lucky I lost my baby when I was young?
That's not what we're saying.
We didn't choose what happened to us. We didn't choose to lose our babies. But we choose to thank God for the time they were with us.
Oh yeah, God makes all things so he can rip them away, so you might as well just suck it up and smile.
Absolutely not.
I didn't mean to make you more upset than you already were.
I'd say it's time for the next story.
No, I can't take 5 more of these. I'm sure you're all just fantastic people, but we have to get in there.
The doors are still locked, Alice.
This is torture.
Don't give up on us.
Who's next?
That will be me.
But
The one in charge.
Alice gets the point and gives in.
let's hear it.
I was born in 1847, as you saw. In my lifetime, I saw the building of the Great Salt Lake Valley. There was plenty of work to be done and plenty of fun to be had.
The set changes to the Salt Lake Valley, 1867. Elizabeth is now standing before a modest log cabin surrounded by fruit trees.
By my 20th birthday, I was engaged and married to a fine gentleman named Isaac Christopherson. He owned a spacious sheep farm, complete with 50 sheep, 4 horses, and a head of cattle, and a thriving vegetable garden.
Sue dons an apron and bonnet and plays Sue Bildy. She enters with a wooden spoon. The bonnet is humorously covering her face like it's too big for her. She waves it around angrily. Sue Bildy speaks with a heavy Scandinavian accent.
Elizabeth! Elizabeth, how dare you? How dare you?
And his first wife.
Elizabeth melts into the scene and begins addressing Sue Bildy.
Elizabeth,
Elizabeth?
I tried to do something and you ruined it. Again.
What was it this time?
You ruined my soup.
I did no such thing.
I put 3 onions in the pot. 3 onions. How many onions in the pot? 4. There are 4 onions in the pot.
Are they whole onions?
They are chopped up onions.
Now how do you know there were 4?
I look at the onion, Elizabeth. I look, I count. 1 onion is this many, and there are 4 of this many in the kettle.
Kettle?
Pot.
4 in the pot.
There are 4 chopped up onions in the pot with the soup.
And I put the 4th onion in the pot?
You see? I told you. You admit.
Isaac enters. He is a broad, husky, bearded man in his early 50s. He is dressed in his work clothes and clearly coming from a full day's work. He also has a heavy Scandinavian accent.
I did not admit to anything, Willie. All I said was,
Excuse me, Vildy, Elizabeth?
Isaac, she did it again. She ruined my soup.
That's impossible.
You don't be taking her side on this one, Isaac. You know good and you know well.
It is not possible because no soup made by her hand could be ruined.
Oh, you smooth-talking Norske kid.
Isaac takes Sue Bildy gently by one shoulder, placing her face in his hand.
I only tell the truth, my sweet.
She had no right to.
The two argue in Swedish, and Sue Bildy eventually calms down. Then Isaac kisses Sue Bildy on the cheek, and she gives Elizabeth one more glare before she heads back into the cabin.
Dinner will be ready by 5 minutes.
She exits. Isaac turns to Elizabeth.
The soup, huh?
I claim nothing.
Well, that is good because I remember there was onion yesterday. Vildy would not let you use it in your pot pie.
I recall.
She was very adamant about the onion.
Indeed.
I'm sure there is not a way the onion could have made its way into Vildy's soup today.
Of course not.
Especially not on spite.
Out of spite?
Out of spite?
Out of spite. One cannot perform an action on spite.
Oh, out of spite, not on spite.
If an extra onion fell into Wildy's soup today, it will have been out of spite.
I see.
Spite from the disagreement yesterday.
About the pies and the soups.
Yes.
But not really about the pies or the soups.
No, not really.
Isaac slowly embraces her, and she responds likewise.
And not really about the onions.
A little bit about the onions.
If only life was onions and soups and pies.
It wouldn't be as complicated,
Or confusing.
but it wouldn't be as fulfilling.
Or as blessed.
Elizabeth and Isaac continue to embrace a moment longer before the scene shifts to a pioneer cemetery 15 years later. Isaac is grieving at Bildy's headstone. Elizabeth addresses Alice once again.
Billy and I did not always get along, but we could agree on 2 things: our love for our husband and our commitment to our family. Life was complicated, but it was possible through the Lord and His mercy. When Billy passed, the family never quite felt the same.
The scene shifts again, and Isaac and Elizabeth take hands, back facing the audience as they stare into the sunset. Sue Bildy then re-enters and takes Isaac's other hand. The 3 stand in unity for a moment before Sue Bildy gently takes Isaac off stage with her, leaving Elizabeth to watch them go. She addresses Alice again as the scene shifts back to the hospital.
And all the time I was alive, I couldn't explain exactly why God expects us to live this way. Sometimes I could see the benefits, other times I saw the pitfalls. I am afraid I counted my trials above my blessing too often, or spoke ill of my situations a little too much. In the end, I wouldn't have changed a thing, and I'm glad I agreed to live the principle. After all, not one of you would be here if it wasn't for Isaac's patience, Billy's sacrifice, and the Lord's promise that it would be for our good.
You were a polygamist.
I accept the Lord's invitation to live the principle of plural marriage. Yes.
Is the lesson that I need to stop complaining? I'm lucky to have running water and a monogamous husband.
No, dear.
I couldn't do what you did. There, I admit it. My problems aren't as bad as yours.
None of us could do what you do, Alice. But these stories are not just the test of whose life was more difficult.
We weren't sent to help you. We weren't sent to help you compare as much as like it.
I can't do this.
You can.
I'm up next.
Is it more of the principle?
Me? Oh, no. No, by the time I was to be married, the Lord was ceasing the practice. I was my husband's only wife.
And she alone was almost more than any sane man could handle.
Oh, Edmund was lucky to have me, though not nearly as lucky as I was to have him.
If you want the image of a man supporting his wife's dreams, here's the example for you.
You have to remember, I lived in a different world.
I gathered you were in the medical field?
Indeed, trained under the finest doctor in the world, Ellis Reynolds Shipp.
Hold on. Female doctor?
Brigham Young once said, if you educate a man, you educate a man. If you educate a woman, you educate a generation.
So here in Utah, we had as many opportunities as we could.
The scene shifts to a medical school laboratory in 1901, complete with a long metal table full of microscopes, petri dishes, and a human heart in a tray. Yeah, good luck with that one.
I graduated from Ellis's school as a licensed midwife, and I loved delivering babies, but I felt I needed to study more. So I enrolled in the University of Michigan Medical School and received my doctor's licensure. In between it all, I had 3 babies who my dear Edmund would care for while I was away at school. Edith, for example, was born during the summer of 1900. I worked quickly to finish as my missing them had me at the brink of giving up constantly.
Franny throws on a 19th century nursing apron and carries a stack of textbooks. Ada melts into the scene and gets to work writing in a notebook as she examines the heart. Franny Millie enters quickly.
Ada, what are you still doing here?
I am finishing my analysis.
At this hour?
Don't be silly, it's only...
Ada looks at the clock for the first time.
Perhaps it's a little later than I realized.
The midterm examination results have been posted. Don't you want to see
I
them?
can see them on my way to the dormitories.
I suppose. Wait a minute. I don't recall an analysis being due this week.
This is next month's project.
Of course it is. Have you heard from your children lately?
Yes.
And?
Well, Teresa, she took her first steps 3 weeks ago.
Oh, Ada, that's
The left ventricle,
wonderful.
it shows significant blood flow obstruction.
Wonderful. You know, Ada, your children will surely...
His heart was suffering from subaortic stenosis.
I'm sure they know
Dr.
that.
Thurkle must have misdiagnosed.
You're the perfect mother is all I'm saying.
I'm fairly certain you must be present to be a perfect mother.
Franny Millie places her hand on Ada's shoulder and Ada looks at her.
Didn't you say over and over, this is where God needs you? Why would that make you any less of a mother?
I miss them.
You'll see them soon, especially working at this pace.
You're too good a friend.
You're an inspiration. Come on, let's go look at the examination results.
Ada smiles and cleans up her materials. They exit the laboratory together and the set shifts to a Red Cross field hospital in World War I, Paris, 1918. It is late into the night. A wounded soldier is in a bed, heavily bandaged, especially on his face, from wounds caused by mustard gas poisoning. Ada is back to addressing Alice.
I graduated from the Michigan Medical School in 1902, and for the next 16 years, I was employed as a doctor at the Salt Lake General Hospital. Of course, that was secondary to my career as a mother, until it came to another grinding halt when the United States entered World War I. The culmination of everything I'd learned seemed to appear before my eyes, and the call to action was too deep to ignore.
Ada melts into the scene, dressing as an army nurse. She sits at a desk by lamplight, hurriedly recording a journal entry. Coughs and groans of soldiers are heard, as well as nurses shuffling around as quietly as they can. Despite it being late, the hospital is as busy as ever, tending to the hundreds wounded. Suddenly, our soldier wakes up from a nightmare with a start. He can't move very well due to his bandages, but he cries loud enough to catch the audience's attention quickly. The soldier speaks in a very raspy French accent. He and Ada speak French back and forth until the soldier realizes he is safe and calms down.
Safe. I am safe.
Safe.
I am so sorry.
C'est bon.
I am so sorry. I did not mean to. My chest.
No, you mustn't touch it.
It hurts.
I know.
My face.
It will heal, but only if you leave it alone. Would you like some water?
Oui.
Here.
Ada takes him a glass from the bedside table and fills it with water. The soldier struggles to contain his coughs enough to drink. Ada patiently holds the water to the soldier's lips until his coughing slows and he drinks. When he is finished, she puts the cup back and he winces.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How much longer with the bandages?
A few weeks, I'm afraid. No. Your face is healing. You don't believe me? Let me see it. I have 7 children at home, Soldat. I have every right to use my mother voice on you. There you are. Look at those eyes. I see 1 and 2. According to my professional opinion as a licensed medical doctor, it is my understanding that a healthy human being must have 2 eyes. Eyes that look past the destruction and desolation to the beauty and purity beneath. You are not a Goulet Creuset. You are a handsome young man who just about gave his life for his country. Isn't that something? One day you may see what I see. The soldier gratefully places his bandaged hand on Ada's. She pats it and strokes his face. Get some rest, Soldat. That's an order. Ada smiles as the soldier's eyes close and she stands up from the bed. The scene shifts back to our hospital waiting room. Ada is addressing Alice again. Mustard gas was not lethal, but it left a soldier permanently wounded. It was often a fate worse than death. That's awful. It is.
She came home soon after that.
I did because the war ended.
But not fine.
With the end of World War I came the Spanish influenza pandemic. I was with my family.
For as long as you could be.
What do you mean? My mother contracted influenza and died among her patients.
She literally gave her life saving the lives of others.
It was the least I could do for my fellow man.
You said you checked in on my doctors. You were there, weren't you? Through the surgery? The delivery?
I was.
What did she look like? My baby.
She's tiny. No bigger than your 2 hands. She's got a head full of hair.
Really?
The doctors were thorough with everything. They did a fine job given the circumstances and...
Suddenly, the operation room doors swing open and a doctor walks out in very slow motion holding a clipboard. He wipes his forehead with his wrist and looks at the clipboard. Alice rushes to the doors, as does Ada, but neither arrive in time before the door locks shut again. Ada then looks over Doctor's shoulder at his chart.
The surgery is over. The first surgery for the baby. It looks like they worked on her lungs, but they'll need another surgery for her.
The doctor suddenly gets an alert on his pager and urgently makes his way back to the doors.
What is it? What's happening?
Alice tries to enter the operating room again, but an invisible force keeps her from getting too close.
What? No, why can't I?
The doctor is able to enter the doors, and once they close, the invisible force holding Alice back subsides. She scrambles for the handles, but they won't budge. She begins to pound on the door and shake it to open. Ada runs to her and grabs her arms.
Let me in!
It's not the baby, Alice dear, it's you. The page was for you.
What?
Something to do with Alice.
What do you mean?
You're sure?
I'm sure.
This is it. God's answering my prayers. He's giving my life for hers.
You know that's not how it works.
Why not? She's getting better. I'm getting worse. Isn't that the way? It wasn't that way before you all began telling your stories.
The baby still has a long ways to go as well. Neither of you are in the clear. In fact, I don't believe they had planned on more than one surgery with her, but it looks like they found more problems than were anticipated.
It doesn't matter. She's not on an operating table anymore, not for now. She's alive, she's breathing.
A machine is likely breathing for her.
So what?
Let's not jump to conclusions.
She has to be okay. She has to.
We just can't be sure.
Why not?
Alice.
Alice begins pacing. She's beyond physical contact and avoids it, pushing off every hand that tries to comfort her.
I've done everything right. I've kept every commandment, followed every single rule. I do my best. I don't ask for many things, and if I have to, I'll take them all back. These stories are just taking time I don't have. I can't do this.
Alice, dear.
I don't want anything. Not even my own life. I want her to grow up strong, to be held by her daddy tomorrow, to hear the birds outside. I want her to be okay.
We all do.
I can't take this waiting. I can't.
You can't.
I can't.
You can't.
No, Edith, I can't.
Well, I'm not sure what you're doing here then.
What's that supposed to be?
You're obviously convinced of what you can't do.
So what?
Focus on what you can do.
Which is what?
You've already told us what you can't, that you can't wait. That you can't live without your daughter, that you can't give up control of the things you wish you could control. So then what on God's green earth can you do?
I don't know.
Oh, you don't, do you?
I don't know.
You can complain, that much is apparent.
Mother.
It looks to me like we have a curmudgeon here, but somewhere inside that curmudgeon is my great-great-granddaughter, and I would like to address her, please. Oh, and she's got a fine pair of ears as well. Then why don't you use them? I'm only gonna say this once.
The scene shifts to a modest country home in Swan Valley, Idaho, 1932. It's sparsely decorated and vacant of almost all food. In the center is a countertop with bread dough on top. Next to the countertop is a bassinet with a baby.
Much has been said about the time that I lived. World War I was my teenage years, and the Roaring '20s my young adulthood. I married Albert Pruitt in 1923. We had 5 boys, then Francis in 1933. When the Depression started, Albert and I lost our house, so we moved in with his folks on their dirt farm in Swan Valley, Idaho. No man, woman, or child was exempt from work. Life was what it was, and we lived by one simple rule: use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without.
Elizabeth dons a 1930s apron and puts her hair up swiftly, turning into the sour Elizabeth Wilma. She carries a small basket of fresh picked vegetables. Edith melts into the scene and begins kneading the bread dough.
That bread isn't in the oven yet?
Good morning, Mama.
Where's your boy?
Kurt fell in mud in a mud heap outside. I had to wash him off.
What was he doing outside?
I opened the door to let a breeze in.
You can't just keep the door open in the middle of the day. Those black lizards are coming our way.
Of course they are.
I raised my boy to work hard. It must be so difficult not to have been raised that way. I told Albert time to time again, he must marry a strong girl, but wait. Now, hold on. You say you washed her down?
Yes.
Then why isn't he helping you kneading the dough?
He's in the bedroom, folding the laundry.
I thought you said you were going to fold the laundry this morning.
How's the garden doing?
There was a fine amount of snap peas, carrots. Should be ready to pick next week. Your raspberries are dead, however.
Oh?
Yes, you really should have watered them more.
The baby in the bassinet begins to cry, and Elizabeth Wilma runs to it.
Oh, my sweet baby, Francis.
She picks up the baby and begins to rock it in her arms. The baby stops crying.
Oh, you poor thing. You must be so hot. It's so hot out inside. Why didn't your mommy open the door for you, baby, huh? Why didn't she? You just need a nice little breeze.
Edith kneads the dough harder.
Don't knead the dough so hard. It will make the bread dry.
Edith kneads the dough softer.
Well, now it's not doing anything. Here, let me see.
Elizabeth Wilma hands Edith the baby and begins kneading the dough. Edith burps the baby over her shoulder.
Edith, dear, I know you're trying. You and the children have been such a help to us in these dark times. I'm sure you felt so overwhelmed by it all. Heaven knows not everyone is built for the farm life, but all you need to do is try a little bit harder. Can you do that?
Elizabeth Wilma pats Edith on the shoulder and exits as the scene shifts to the living room of a modest home in Clearfield, Utah, 1944.
My gracious mother-in-law was all too happy to keep giving me such advice frequently. But as with all bad things, the Depression came to an end. The start of World War II brought more job opportunities, and we were able to relocate to Utah. It was beautiful to be part of a patriotic America again. But with that patriotism came sacrifice.
Leroy enters. He is an 18-year-old wearing a World War II Army uniform and carrying a knapsack. Edith melts into the scene. She's restless and pacing, finding things to clean or do as she addresses him, brushing off his uniform, looking for anything he might be missing.
You look so handsome.
Thank you.
You ate all your soup, didn't you?
Yes, Mama.
Take some rolls with you.
I'm not hungry.
There will be boys on the bus who are.
All right.
Did you see Thelma off?
She's meeting me at the station.
That's good. That's good.
I'm gonna find him.
Don't talk like that.
He's still out there. I know he is.
Your job is to stay safe and to come home.
I have to try.
You listen to me. You will always do as you're told, and you will fight when you have to fight, but you will not go out of your way. You come home, you back home, and
Mama.
You heard what happened to the Miller boy?
I'm not like him.
Oh no? He thought he was some kind of hero too. Said he wanted to kill some Nazis. Soon enough, he disobeyed direct orders and a landmine made sure his family didn't have a body to bury. Would you do that to us?
No.
No what?
No, ma'am.
That's right.
I just want to bring James home.
You will do as you're told, Leroy. Stay safe. Oh,
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you.
you could never upset me.
She embraces him for as long as she possibly can.
Will you pray with me?
Nonsense.
Please?
No.
Mama.
If God listened to prayers, my boys wouldn't be on the battlefield today, would they? Now you look at me. My brave little soldier. I will see you real soon, all right? All right?
Yes, ma'am.
I love you, my boy.
I love you, Mama.
Leroy walks out the door and Edith watches him as he goes. It's silent for a moment before Edith addresses Alice again. Though her gaze never leaves the spot where Leroy just exited, the set slowly changes around her and she slowly but eventually begins to face Alice again. We return to the hospital room with the women in their same positions, save Ada, who is up against the operating room doors.
It was the last time I saw him alive. My brave little soldier. Leroy Edmund Pruitt was killed in action on June 6, 1944, at the invasion of Normandy, doing exactly what he was told to do. His older brother, James Christopher, went missing in action in Japan sometime in 1943. Edgar Albert, my oldest, was the only one of our drafted sons to come home, but his mind stayed in the battlefield a few years after.
Have you seen him? Leroy? And James, have you seen them?
There really was a heaven waiting for me once I passed this life, whether I deserved it or not, because the good Lord didn't bring my boys back, but he brought me back to my boys.
Alice walks to Edith and embraces her. When they pull from the hug, Edith grabs Alice's face in her hands.
There's a whole lot more you can do than you can't.
Yes, ma'am.
That's for sure.
Someone's coming.
The doctor re-enters in slow motion and hangs up his clipboard outside the door before exiting through the guest entrance. Ada rushes to it and reads it.
You're okay, Alice. Your blood pressure dropped and you needed another transfusion, but you're stable. You're in recovery again.
Franny comes up behind Alice and puts her arm around her shoulder.
Well then, I think that just about settles that. How about I tell you my story? It'll be quick.
What about she's resting?
How stable is she?
It says resting, but nothing is certain until she can perform her second operation.
We'll stop if anything changes.
All right.
You ready?
I think so.
Swell. Well, we'll start after the war.
The set shifts to a messy kitchen in 1954. It's strewn with dirty dishes, baby toys, half-eaten baby food. A door leading to the backyard is present.
Growing up, my family had all but given up on church and the things after the Depression, so I wasn't all that familiar with deep religion. Of course, we still considered ourselves good Christian people, but my mother and father had been through so much already. Being LDS wasn't exactly at the top of our list of priorities. My Derek, though, he was devout, and so was his family. When we started going together, they made sure to invite me to the worship services and such. I'll tell you, I just fell in love. I found a peace and a joy and a purpose. I wanted nothing more than to give the gospel everything I've got. But there's one thing they don't tell you about the church before you commit, and that's the other people in it.
Franny dons a 1953 women's hair curlers. Ada Valerie enters looking like the perfect 50s housewife, with a frilly dress, cat-eye glasses, heels, and loud curls to match. Franny melts into the scene and begins frantically looking for something throughout the kitchen. Ada Valerie knocks on the door.
Coming!
Franny opens the door, then goes right back to searching.
Well, hello, Val.
Franny.
Please have a seat.
Franny realizes there's no seat to be had and hastily clears a chair for her. Then she goes back to searching as Ada Valerie pulls out a kerchief, dusts the clear chair a bit more, then sits down.
What can I do for you?
I understand you asked Yolanda to host the church bake sale.
Indeed I did. Her garden has the most gorgeous violets.
We can't hold it there. Her husband couldn't preside.
Sure he could. All it takes is a few bucks and a stomach. Everyone's welcome.
That's not what I mean. We have to hold the sale in a home where the priesthood is present.
I'm sorry?
The Bankos are Negroes. They can't have the priesthood in their home.
Well, where does it say that?
Franny, you can't be serious.
The Bankles are members of our congregation. Last time I checked, the Lord didn't stop members of his congregation from throwing a little get-together.
Homes like theirs are different from homes like ours.
I sure as hell hope your home is different than mine.
Excuse me?
God called me to this committee, and finding the venue was my responsibility.
I can't think of a single good reason why.
As far as I can tell, Yolanda Bankroll could use some friends. Certain people around here tend to judge her before they've even spoken a word. And her garden is damn near the prettiest this neighborhood has to offer.
For Ranny.
We are having the bake sale there, and that is the last of it. If you'd rather not attend, I'll be happy to pick up your dessert on my way.
How dare you?
Was there anything else you needed?
Well, I'd never. No, there is absolutely nothing I'd like from you.
Very well. Have a good day then.
There is one thing we can agree on. Our houses will never be the same. Because at my house, you can actually see the floor.
And with that, she flips her head and walks off. Granny stays for a moment before rolling her eyes and turning back to her search. Before she can, however, she spots what she was looking for, a baby bottle.
Ah, there it is.
She takes the big bottle proudly and then turns back to address Alice as the scene shifts. We are now in Ada Valerie's home in 1963. It is far more well-to-do than Granny's. Ada Valerie is in a love seat, clearly not well. Though she is as dressed up as she can be, she's visibly mourning something. She has a blanket over her lap and tissues strewn about. She's trying to read a magazine.
I wasn't popular, as it were, among the neighborhood ladies. Those days were generally filled with a lot of people wearing a lot of makeup, covering a whole lot of darkness. And no matter how many oven mitts you crocheted or Collins, your husband, held, green lawns and white pearls of our neighborhood could never actually measure the true character of our people.
Granny melts into the scene and raps on Ada Valerie's door. Ada Valerie glances at the door but pretends not to hear and goes back to her magazine. Granny knocks again with still no answer. So she decides to enter the house anyways. When she enters, she carries a plastic mud pan that holds Jell-O inside.
Better not be naked in there.
Franny!
Morning, Val.
It's 2 p.m.
It's morning somewhere.
What are you doing in my house?
Bringing you Jell-O.
This is completely inappropriate, Franny.
Funny, I thought you saved that phrase for my comments in Sunday school.
All right, well, you brought your Jell-O, now get out.
I also need that cranberry juice coupon you promised.
Right now?
If you would have been in church on Sunday, I would have asked you then.
Granny spots the coupon on the coffee table.
There it is.
Granny holds up the coupon and looks at it, waving it around with emphasis on her next lines.
Thank you. The Jell-O is lemon, I think. Frankly, the mix has been in my pantry so long, the label's faded. If it tastes like pineapple, it's pineapple.
Granny gets up to leave.
Franny, that coupon is for marmalade.
Did I say apple juice? I meant marmalade.
You said cranberry juice.
Oh, well,
Good heavens, Franny, are you here to mock me?
Mock you?
Can't say I blame you.
Val.
You're the first person who's actually doing it to my face.
I'm not here to mock you.
Granny sits herself in a chair opposite Ada Valerie. Silence stretches for a while. Finally,
Did they say anything about it? In church?
Not over the pulpit or anything.
The ladies?
Pickalittles will always be pickalittles.
That's what you call them?
They pick.
They do not.
They pick, gossip. All it does is get their little tatas in a twist.
Franny!
It's true, and it's a hard task too. What with their high and mighty foam domes.
You may be right.
I am right.
I couldn't face them, Franny. I couldn't go.
I understand that.
One day they're your friends, and the next they cut you with their glares.
Well, it wasn't your fault.
You don't know that.
On what? You should have read his books. reviewed his numbers, had more fireside chats on embezzlement.
Maybe if we read scriptures more, if I'd been more diligent.
You're as much to blame as the cops who put him in handcuffs.
Years, Franny. He could be in prison for years. What am I gonna do?
Franny puts her arm around Ada Valerie.
I have enough stares every day with the trial, the news, the reporters. I don't need to go to church and have people staring there too.
Well, when you're sitting with us, they'd be staring anyways.
Sitting with...
You won't be sitting alone, Val. You can come sit in our pew. Heaven knows we could use an extra hand with the kids. We're a little loud, but at the end of sacrament meeting, Thomas has stashed more Cheerios in the cushions than his mouth, and there's always room.
Franny embraces Ada Valerie and then returns to addressing Alice. The set comes back to the hospital waiting room.
You can't control what people see in you, but you can control what you see in others.
Valerie sat in our bench every week. Soon we couldn't imagine church without her.
But she was racist and bigoted.
And how would hating her have helped? Hate cannot drive our hate. Only love can do that. Isn't that what Dr. King said?
I mean, yes.
I stood for what I believed in as best as I could, but hating anybody who opposed those beliefs didn't make the situation any better. It only made it worse.
You're also perfect.
We're not perfect, Alice. We're dead.
Hindsight 2020.
We can simply look at our lives as a little more objectively now.
I still don't understand. You all led such exceptional lives. What am I supposed to be taking from this? That I can't live up to you?
Hey now.
I believe we still have one left.
Maybe then it'll be clearer.
Look at you. You're calmer than you were before.
Maybe I'm just exhausted.
Or maybe you're learning. Are you ready for your last story?
I'm ready to get out of slow motion.
Then I'll try to make it fast.
You're the last one?
Indeed.
But I already know your story. Girl boss, bajillionaire who makes killer pancakes.
Well, you're certainly right about the pancakes.
I know your story already, Grandma. I should be ready to go. To move out of the interjacents.
Ada tries the surgery doors, but they don't budge. She shrugs to Alice.
What am I missing?
The set shifts to the university business classroom in 1981. Chambers is grading papers at his desk.
I was born in 1952. Around my 14th birthday, I started to get very sick. Medicine was different back then, and my condition was rare. By the time I was 16, the doctors told me I would most likely be unable to have children. I think that's why it took me so long to agree to marry Peter. I wanted him to be sure he wanted me and my limitations. Luckily, he did. Once we were married, I received my bachelor's in communications and then went to graduate school for business in 1980. I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but God had even more in store than I'd planned.
Sue melts into the scene. She throws on a book bag and carries multiple notebooks straight out of 1981 and approaches Chambers in delay.
Excuse me, Dr. Chambers.
Susan, to what do I owe the pleasure?
Two things. I wanted to hand in tomorrow's assignment. I won't be able to attend the lecture, but I've asked Leonard to take notes for me. I have an appointment.
It's fine. Is everything all right?
Yes, in fact, it's better than all right. My husband and I found out we're expecting.
You did?
Yes, tomorrow is my first appointment.
I see.
I'll be in lecture again next Tuesday, of course.
That won't be necessary.
I'd hate to miss 2 classes in a row.
I'm not sure you'll be needed to attend my class again. Or any for that matter.
I'm sorry?
Your condition is not ideal for a graduate student in our program.
Oh, well, sure, it's not ideal, but...
This is a rather exclusive
I
program.
completely understand, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be a part of it.
But perhaps not grateful enough. We only want dedicated students here.
Dr. Chambers.
I'm afraid there is no room for women who just want to play house. By the choice you've made, it's clear you're not interested in reaching your full potential.
Dr. Chambers, my pregnancy has no bearing on my capabilities as a student. If anything, it will push me to be the best I can for the future life of my child. Tomorrow I have an appointment, but from now on I'll do my best to work my health around your class schedule.
She turns to exit, then returns to addressing Alice. The set changes to a break room in a 1980s office building. Joanna Bridget is in neon 80s business attire, eating her lunch and reading a tabloid. She speaks in an American accent, maybe chewing gum.
So maybe I was a bit overdramatic in my response. But I'd spent so long convinced I couldn't have a baby, and to be told that I finally had one and that I had to choose between her and my career, it was unbelievable. So I graduated, diploma in one hand, your mama in the other. Then I went on and I launched my office supply brand. Of course, the company didn't make bajillions right off, as you called it, but I was successful, and soon it was time for a change.
Sue melts into the scene.
Bridget!
Sue, oh my goodness, I can't believe you're leaving us.
Joanna Bridget gets up and hugs Sue.
You're in very capable hands with Stephen.
Sit down with me, come sit down.
I just came to thank you for your kind words during the meeting. I'll miss you all.
I'm so glad you stopped by because I wanted to talk to you about that.
Joanna Bridget gets quiet and looks around to be sure no one is listening. She leans in.
Is everything okay at home?
Of course, why?
I mean, this isn't because of Peter, is it?
Peter.
The world is changing, Sue. Women aren't meant for the home anymore. You don't have to do what he says.
Oh no, Peter hasn't.
That's okay, you can talk to me.
What?
You can stay here and be everything you want to be. You don't have to go through whatever he tells you.
Bridget, I don't know what you've heard, but Peter is not the reason I'm leaving. He and I agreed on this together.
Did you really?
Yes, Bridget, I really appreciate your concern, but I need to be home right now.
The business is booming. We're about to go international. You know we can't do it without you.
Like I said, Stephen will still be consulting with me. I'm only a phone call away.
But why? You're doing so much good here. Yuppies are still dominating the workplace. Women like you have to step up.
Who will step up for my kids?
Maybe it's Peter's turn. Let him see what it feels like to be stuck in the kitchen.
Bridget.
It's because of women like you that we can't rise above the patriarchy.
Maybe. But right now, I can't keep spending 8 hours a day away from my babies. I'm sure I'll start working again when they're older, but right now...
So you're just going to pick the easy way out? Cook pies and wait for the man of the house to do all the work for you?
Sue is in shock for a moment, and then decides this is not the hill she wishes to die on.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Sue returns to addressing Alice. The scene returns to her hospital waiting room.
And that's what I did. I stayed home and pranced around, cleaning diapers and cleaning messes, cooking meals and attending PTA meetings, reading books and drying tears, soothing fevers and mending clothes, carpooling and sleeping 2 hours a night, all because I wanted my husband to do the hard work for me. Once my kids were in high school, I began another business. This time a line of hair accessories, and we made it big. Maybe that's where you're getting this bajillion-dollar estimate from. Every life is different. Every family and every woman has their own circumstances. But I learned quickly who was in charge of it all.
I'm sensing a theme here.
I do hope so.
Grandma, I didn't realize, well, any of you. I didn't realize that any of you had so many.
Alice tries to gather her thoughts. Meanwhile, very gradually, and at first incoherently, the sound of a heart monitor is getting slowly louder. Though neonatal heart rates should be rapid, this one is anything but. It is in slow motion, beating at a painfully labored rate.
This wasn't really about your stories, was it? It wasn't about pioneers or world wars or bake sales. You all chose to do the same thing.
The heartbeat grows louder and louder.
Wait. Maybe it's despite when you lived, you all had to.
Suddenly, she senses something is off. She begins to hear the heartbeat and looks at the operation room doors. The slow monitored heart rate sound flatlines.
Hold on.
She runs to the door and pulls on it. It won't budge.
Do you hear it? You hear it, don't you?
Alice. The women slowly, one by one, go to her and put their hand on her, pulling her back. Meanwhile, Alice begins pulling at the doors more and more forcefully. The flatline sound continues.
Her heart, I hear her heart.
Women are surrounding her now, slowly and gently pulling Alice away from the door.
I have to get in, you have to.
Doctor bursts into the guest entrance with a crash cart. He's running in slow motion. The only thing happening at a regular speed is the woman's movements. The lights begin to falter. The women surround Alice. She fights against them to no avail. In all the panic of the women surrounding Alice and the doctor, slowly but surely entering the operating room, Ada sneaks into the operating room as well.
I can hear her heart.
The women continue to hold Alice as she struggles.
Please, dear, remember what we've taught you.
Let me go.
You saw what happened. Those doors still aren't open to you.
I have to see her.
Stop.
They're doing everything they can.
My baby.
Alice, please.
I can't.
Alice struggles less and less as she goes into shock. Meanwhile, Edith comes around to face Alice dead on and looks her in the eyes.
But what can you do?
I guess. I can give her up.
The thought-line sound is now accompanied by the faint sounds of slow-motion thumping from chest compressions. When Alice finishes speaking, Ada emerges from the operating room with the baby in a cream cloth. Ada smiles at the infant and brings her to Alice's arms. Alice takes the baby and holds her tight.
My baby girl?
Alice continues to embrace her as the women continue to watch. Periodic chest compression sounds still happening. Alice is simply holding her baby without speaking, the lights slowly honing in on her, and then...
Your life. It was never mine to have. He trusted me with you, but you belong to him. And I know that. I can't. There's so many things I can't do, but here's something I can.
Alice slowly begins to rise and talks to her daughter. She holds her in paces. Meanwhile, the set shifts to several seats at an airport. A few suitcases lean against the chairs. Alice hands off the baby and melts into the scene. She narrates to the audience as if they are the baby she is speaking to.
I was serving a mission in Boston, Massachusetts, when the world shut down. All missionaries who could were sent home to quarantine. On the 26th, we were told to pack our bags, and on March 27th, 2020, I flew home. I was terrified, I was confused, exhausted, and that's where I met him.
Alice dons an LDS missionary name badge and a medical mask. She sits in the seat on which the luggage leans. As she melts into the scene, her legs shake, her hands ring. She's looking around and appears at a loss of things to do. Finally, she reaches into her bag and pulls out a set of well-used scriptures. As she begins reading, Riley enters, wheeling his luggage. He is also a missionary in his early 20s, in a suit and tie with his missionary badge on and wearing a mask. When he spots Alice, he hesitantly approaches. She doesn't notice as he comes close, then remembers social distancing and backs up. Then feels alone and comes closer and ends up sitting 3 chairs away from her. He clears his throat.
Oh, I'm
Sorry, you
I didn't mean.
didn't see you there.
I kind of snuck up. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
So, ever wondered who you are, why you're here, and where you're going?
Wow.
Well, if not, I've got just the book for you.
Where are you coming from?
Texas, McAllen. You?
Massachusetts, Boston.
It's weird, isn't it?
Unreal.
I had a good idea of what coming home would look like.
I'm sure this wasn't it.
Are you kidding? I'm a huge fan of social distancing. I mean, 6 feet from everyone I meet in the foreseeable future? Yes! I mean, personally, a Bible never felt like a big enough gap for church slow dances.
I forgot about that.
Oh, I wish I could forget about that.
So you're pretty excited then?
For what?
Getting back into the dating scene?
Excuse me, sister. I am still a set-apart missionary.
Oh, my apologies.
Man, leave room for the spirit, will ya?
You're terrible. You keep talking like that and they'll never let you back in the field.
Actually, I was only a month from coming home.
Really?
Yeah, I think this is home for good.
No kidding. Me too.
Really?
I hit my 16-month mark last Tuesday.
Silence lingers again as they reflect. Suddenly, Alice's phone buzzes. She checks it.
Oh, wow.
That the fam?
Yeah. Man, this is really happening.
Everything happens for a reason. I'm sure we'll figure out that reason one day.
I hope so.
Alice stands and gathers her luggage, about to leave. Riley quickly stands to go after her, but again, 6 feet problem. So he calls out to her.
Hey, by the way, I don't think I caught your name, Sister...
Stuart and Elder...
Wyatt. Riley Wyatt.
They stare at each other, then Alice melts back into addressing the audience as if they're the baby she's addressing. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to a newlywed apartment where Riley is doing homework at the couch. He's deep in study and has headphones in.
We exchanged information, and once we were released, we couldn't stop texting, FaceTiming, calling. Being locked in our houses helped. And when quarantine was over, we both came to Utah for school. We went on a date, then 2, then 5. We fell in love and got married in December of 2021. We couldn't imagine being any happier. And then we were.
Alice melts into the scene. She snoops over to Riley unnoticed and then curls up next to him, kissing him on the cheek. He puts his hands on her knee without looking away from the computer. So she kisses his temple, then his head, then his ear.
Oh no, oh no! A beautiful woman, she's kissing me to death. I don't think I can take it much longer.
He puts the laptop down and wraps her up in his arms. She reciprocates and they kiss. Feel free to add banter as they do. Afterwards, they end up staring at each other, laughing.
I love you.
I love you.
I need to tell you something.
Anything.
Are you sure?
Music comes in, and I suggest the song Best Day With You by Jesse Early, or a song like it.
Yes, what is it? Something wrong?
No. She pulls out the pregnancy test and shows it to him. He doesn't comprehend it.
Wait, you?
Alice takes his face and kisses him.
We're having a baby.
We're having a baby!
The couple embraces and everything goes into non-dialogue interlude montage world. The song is now at full volume. They hug for a good long time, maybe kiss again, while the set quietly changes behind them. Alice hands up the pregnancy test and returns the baby. Then she and Riley have a moment with her. They cuddle her, whisper, love her, and after a bit of dance moment, they sing the song and this imaginary time together. The dreams of them someone shared in the future of them and their baby. Finally, once the moment has passed and the song concludes, the set has fully shifted to the hospital waiting room. Riley exits and Alice sits in a single spotlight with the baby. The music is gone. It's just her, the baby, and silence. The grandmothers are around Alice, but in the darkness.
You came from a whole lot of love. I love you. Your daddy loves you. And your grandmas love you too. They're going to take great care of you. And I'll be with you again someday, I promise.
Then, at a loss of words, she brings the baby up to her face and kisses her one last time.
Goodbye, my angel.
She hands the baby to Ada, who takes her gently off stage. The spotlight is still only on Alice, who can't bear to watch them go. And instead looks up for the following monologue.
I don't know your plan, God. I don't know why you gave her to me, only to take her back. I want to believe, I do believe, there's more to your plan than I can understand right now. And all this suffering, all this pain, all these questions, you feel them too. You're hurting too. I wish I could control this thing, something, everything, but I can't. You can. You always can. So take care of my baby, please. And I trust that because of you, Lord, I will be with her again someday.
The lights slowly come up as the women, except Ada, hold Alice in a group hug. The heartbeat monitor sound suddenly comes back, but they're back to a regular rhythm.
Take good care of her, okay? Keep reminding her I love her and I'll see her again.
The women look at each other amidst the hug, as if confirming that each feels the same way.
I'm not sure we can do that, Alice.
What? Why?
She's not coming with us.
What do you mean?
Ada re-enters the room empty-handed.
Where did she go?
Off stage, the sound of a newborn baby cry is heard.
Wait, is she?
The women each step back from Alice as she turns to the operation room doors and then back to the grandmothers. They nod. Sue then follows Alice as she races for the doors, the rest of the grandmothers watching her go. But Alice stops before entering.
Who's in charge?
God is in charge,
And he won't?
leave me comfortless.
I love you.
I love you, Grandma.
They hug, and Alice gives the rest of the grandmothers one last look.
Thank you.
We love you. We'll see you again someday.
Alice blows a kiss, then turns to the doors. She takes a breath like Ada taught her, and then bounds through them as the sound of a crying newborn is heard once again. Curtain. End of play.
All right, class, you are welcome to find seats or take yours back. And we'd like to invite our playwright, Addie. a seat. So much shuffling. All right, let's give Addie one more round of applause. She wrote a play. That's hard to do. Okay, so as I mentioned before, this is a play that's in progress. There's been so much progress over the last 6 weeks, which has been really exciting. And it's really nice for us to have some fresh eyes and ears in here to help Addie as she moves forward with her next draft. So we're going to start with Addie talking a little bit about her vision and what she's trying to accomplish, where the idea came from, anything you want to share. And then just a reminder, we'll talk about, we'd love to have observations, so things you felt like you understood about the story, about the world, about the characters, just so we can make sure things are being communicated. We would love to have warm fuzzies, so anything that you felt that you were really enjoying, the things that you wanted to be like, hey, don't touch that. And then we'd love to have your questions, things that maybe you were confused by, that you don't feel like were fully explained or you didn't fully understand, things you want to know more about. All that is good, so that, and we always have the rule that the playwright can respond to the questions if she wants to, and she can also say, thank you, I want to think about that, which is fine either way. So let's start a little with vision.
Yeah, so this play, I received a minor in genealogy at BYU before coming here, and graduating here, and genealogy is something that's always just been really close to my heart. I come from incredible women, and all of the characters were based on real people. Some are based on multiple, some are based on one. One of them's in this room right now, so that's really cool. And the story really just came because I wondered what it would be like to have a conversation with a lot of these women, and I can't right now, right? And so I was like, what if I could? And so there you go, that's where it came from.
Awesome, thanks. So let's start with observations. We would like to lean heavily on our guests, but class members are also welcome to participate. Particularly to give examples, maybe people who are feeling a little unsure. Maisie.
I observed that the story's going chronological order.
Anything else? Yes?
I observed that all the characters were Elias.
I observed that you don't shy away from like the heavy topics that people in the church try to avoid, like polygamy or the fact that Black people didn't have a priesthood. Like you pulled up and stated that that's part of the church history.
I observed that all of the women had very strong opinions in each time.
Any other observations we'd like to throw out? Yeah.
I observed that most of them were all thoroughly American.
Yes.
Very American.
Very. Except for Joy.
Okay. Nope, you're scratching. It's always that, like, you moved, and therefore you risk me calling on you. All right, let's do warm fuzzies. What were moments, characters, ideas, things that you were enjoying? Ooh, lots of hands for that one.
Okay, I really appreciate that it was so centered on the women and not the men.
Thanks.
The part where Christopher, like, Elizabeth is having her baby, and so he hears the baby cry and like drops to his knees. That part always.
Oh, thank you.
I just love the interactions that each of these women have with each other too, and how centered it is around their relationship and how individual each of them are too. Like, I feel like I could see each of them both in modern times and in their
respective time periods too, which I thought was really cool. So I loved that, the versatility.
Good, thank you.
I just loved, I mean all of it, but Edith's whole "what can you do?" that whole theme was really great.
I love Franny.
Me too.
Like bring the lights to the room because she's like just so positive, and then also like I like her vision on things, and then she's like the moment of time is not the best, but she tried her best to do the good thing.
Yeah, thank you.
I will say this is such a little thing, and I don't know if this was there before or if I just caught it last week at the rehearsal, but all of Franny's stuff at the hospital, and I love the moment where Ada's like, like, this is very different from the 1920s. I found that delightful.
I'm so glad, yeah. Thank you.
I also like how Franny says "damn" and hell as she's talking about the sacrament.
Absolutely.
I like the line, we're not perfect, we're dead.
Yeah, that's so good.
Thank you.
Yeah, that acknowledgement of the wisdom of hindsight and yeah.
We're maybe going off, but I love like Franny and Edith's like banter back and forth, where she's very much a mom being like, "Dear godchild, shut up." Don't say those things. It's like so Franny just be like, "No, I don't care what you think of me. Like, I'm just gonna say whatever."
Oh, good. You do a great job of like putting each woman in the time period they're from, and even like Alice is like, "You're a girl boss bajillionaire." Like that's something that Gen Z would say, and only Gen Z.
Oh, good. Thank you.
I am a girl boss.
Yes.
Yes, I appreciated the reference.
I really liked the ability to interrupt the stories to remember the present. Especially when Alice was like, "Wait, but my baby!" in the middle of one of the stories. I really appreciated the like reminder of the stakes.
Okay. That was probably what we worked on the most, is like Alice was just a board like at the beginning of this, and so a lot of the workshop was making Alice a person. So it's good, thank you.
I really liked the order of the stories, and Ada and especially Edith's, you know, like were very sobering and humbling, and so then like I was more open to like having the stories after that had like a better, bigger impact on me.
Good.
I loved Alice's reaction to, "We have 6 stories to tell you." And she's like, "Seriously? I have my baby right here. What do you mean?" But it made sense going into it, and it didn't feel like a children's show where it's like, "Oh, this is a plot device.
Oh,
Let's
good.
tell stories."
Good. That's good, thank you.
I loved all the moments with the hospital where the door is coming in and coming out, and the slow motion. That was great.
I think we also kind of have this warm fuzzy to me, but I love like just like the structure of it when like every woman was like talking, because there were just like the moments where they just kind of like whipped in, but it wasn't like so much that you were like, wait, what's going on? It was just like a little bit of like adding to it. I really love.
Any final comments?
I'm trying to formulate. I thought it was so beautiful and so heartwarming in lots of ways. I loved the chance to sort of step back and look at your own life with that 2020. You know, we don't really have hindsight, but if we did, what would we see? And to think about the strength we've built on, you know, the women in my family, or just the people who've influenced us and who've gone before, and there's always something to admire in everybody's story and build on and look for those traits. Anyway, it's very thought-provoking. I'm just gonna keep thinking about it all day.
Good, thank you.
I love it.
I have a soft spot for Edith. Like, I love how no nonsense she is. She's like, girl, shut up. You don't know nothing. But also like the very real acknowledgement of the hardship of 2 world wars and a depression, like that will fundamentally alter you as a person, and all that loss will fundamentally alter you as a person. And then I know I mentioned it the first day, but I'm just gonna say it again. I love that you do talk about loss and miscarriage and the loss of babies, and which is not something that is talked about and should be. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I have a warm fuzzy too. When you're setting up all the women's stories, the members of the audience are able to connect with the connection with them. So that's something that's really cool about this play. Like how the stories can influence the people in the audience.
And you actually helped a lot too, and helped me a lot with a lot of the context of what Alice was going through. So thank you.
I think like kind of going off, I just love like that moment in like when they're all talking about it, when they're like sharing their experience of like losing a child, but then Edith was like, well, like I didn't lose a baby, technically in the literal sense of like a young like newborn. But she's like, but I do empathize and I do understand. But like, we know how, like we all know how to lose somebody. But we also know how to have somebody that's still there. I just love that.
Yeah, it's kind of a throwaway now with like the oldest son coming back with the PTSD and not being able to, and then yeah, like losing a baby and losing a teenager or an adult child, like technically different, yes, emotionally different, I don't know.
This is like the hardship of like them, because they all have like kids or like their husband, wife, like whoever, like their family that they like still had alive, and so like it wasn't, we never really did talk about it, but also been like, but we were also had like people we held on to, and that kind of is hinted at the beginning too, where they're like, don't worry, like he's not alone, like your parents are with him, like it's okay, like he's also not by himself right now, like neither were we.
Yeah, that's another play in itself.
Oh yeah.
Riley in the waiting room.
Yeah.
Sequel.
Yeah, because that line was thrown in there. He's not alone either.
Questions?
I'm really intrigued by the interpretive dance that happens when Riley and Alice are interacting, and I wondered, do you think that would be separate dancers, or could it possibly be people from the cast?
Yeah, I think I know enough about interpretive dance to put an interpretive dance here, and then that's it. So, I think that I would definitely look up the director. I think it could be really cool, like one of those tap out things where like they take the baby. I think it'd be hard to require someone to be like an amazing interpretive dancer and an actor, but I don't know. So yeah, I would leave it up to the director. But great question. Yeah, it's just kind of.
So a lot of this is based on like your family, and like Alice is like kind of based on you. So I'm wondering if like the way that like Alice meets Riley, like COVID missionary situation, like do you relate to that? Is that how you came up with it, or was that just like an idea you had?
No, you're yeah. So I wasn't a missionary during COVID times, but I had a lot of friends who were. But my husband and I met because, we fell in love because of COVID. So my parents hired him, and I had no intention of meeting him ever. And I knew he'd served a mission in Australia. I thought that was cool. So whenever I saw him, I was like, hey, Australia, that's cool. And then when COVID hit, we were keeping my mom's business afloat and seeing.
I was like, your parents hired him, like.
Oh, that's
like,
it, yeah.
We need an end of that sentence.
Yeah, so sorry.
Of
Yeah.
what they hired him for.
Yeah. Sorry. No. Yeah. So my mom, she's a girl boss, so she owned a music studio, and he was hired as a teacher there. And I was also a teacher. We taught on different days. And so when school started, we happened to teach on the same day, so we would carpool back and forth. We were both dating people. My dad was like, you should really marry this guy. I was like, not happening, Dad, thank you. And yeah, and then COVID hit, and we had to spend every day together, and I couldn't live without him, so we got married. So yes, a little bit, yeah. Yeah, and Riley's definitely based on him.
Do do the grandmothers have a reason that they like want or need to tell their stories?
Yes, yeah. So,
Can we, before you answer, can I, particularly for those who aren't in the class, those certainly those like those of you who joined us late, what do people think the answer is to that question? Because I think it'll be good for you to know what was understood, and then we can certainly hear your response. So could you repeat your question?
Do the grandmothers have a reason that they want or need to tell their stories?
Okay.
I can give you what
I'd love to hear what you thought.
In my head, the justification is that it's just a familial connection, that they have this obligation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think, kind of along with that too, I think it's a empathetic connection of, like they've all had loss before, and they recognize that, and they have this chance to go and comfort her. And I mean, they're not gonna sit on the sidelines like, no, we wanna go talk to her, we wanna go see her, let's do it. We'll have to wait to see her again, so why not now? So there's that comfort. I love it.
Any other what people understood as to why?
I think there was also, like, for me, there was like a bunch of like little reasons why, like individual reasons why they all kind of were there. Because I think, like, when they all kind of came in, it was like talking about loss and all these things, and then like Edith was like, okay, shut up right now. I'm so done with you not being willing to listen. Like, especially when it's like her like mother and like grandmother and like the story that she would have grown up with. Being like, okay, shut up, sit down. Like now we're gonna talk about this because I'm so done. But like this, like her reasoning shifted, and it was like Franny being like, okay, so now that we just had mom, we had a good time. Let me read my story. And it just like that shift of like where like their motivation then comes from is just like help her be like, okay, we're here to like empathize and like here to just be a support system, because at this point you're just stuck. Like whether we're here or not, you're stuck in this middle ground, whether you like it or not. And so like just like they're like for me their motivations kind of changed throughout the story. Just like when their stories come up, and it's like, okay, like what do I want to tell you?
I just wanted to add to that because I think that is so cool. Yeah, a lot of them kind of start off with like, oh, we've been there, you're doing great, sweetie, it's okay, it's gonna be okay. And then Edith shows up and is like, no, you calm down right now, Missy. And each of them, yeah, but that was very much needed. And like, you always think about, like, you have a friend who has a hard time, and personally I'm always like, oh, I want to fix, I want to say the right thing, when really you just have to share and empathize and listen. And Edith, even though it made some of them feel uncomfortable, like the other women, because it's very stern, it was very much needed. Let's put this into perspective, we need to take a breath right now. And so I just wanted to agree with Maisie that, yeah, it spun it all. It's just because she shared. So she was there for a different way, just by sharing. Each of them shared different ways.
I still think my favorite moment in reading is like, all right, tell my story, and all the women just sit down.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
Yes.
Can I guess? Because I don't know. This is the first I've heard this. So it's kind of fun. I'm going to try to say this without being emotional. These women are really relatable, right? In their own individual ways, like you guys have mentioned. But I did notice, you know, they all had loss, but not in the ways that were similar, right? Like you mentioned, some were infants, some were older. Maybe one didn't think they were going to have babies, but then they did. And so maybe that loss of the life they thought they were going to have, but became something more beautiful in having children, right? So every one of them had loss, you could call it loss or disruption in their lives. And I love that the whole goal was that someone else is ultimately in charge. And I love at the end how you made that, you know, I thought the baby was gone, and then the baby was not gone. And that was such an exclamation point on who is in charge. I almost want to see like lights and like a big draft of wind on the characters that like release that fight for control, because that's where the struggle is, right? That's where the pain is trying to control it. and just letting God, right? Anyway, that was my guess.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's wow, all of those things. You guys are great. And definitely, I think the reason I wanted it to be their stories, it was a little selfish because I wanted to explore these stories. I would love to just step back in time for a second and just watch them at work, you know. And also, I think that's all I have to learn from them, right? I can't talk to them right now, but I can read their stories. And reading their stories, and I learn most from stories, right? It's one thing for my grandma to say, back when I was your age, I felt this way, so deal with it. But there's another way, she wouldn't say that, but it is another way to hear her tell a story and to pull from it and put myself in it. And so I think just by showing stories, I think that's why those in real life, that's how we can learn from, and I hope that's what people can take from this play too, is that everybody has ancestors. I even wanted to put a little, I was gonna put what's it called, dedication at the beginning of the play, and I started writing the dedication to each of the women, and I was like, wait, how many are there? And then I realized if you go back to like Joanna time, there's over 150, so I couldn't exactly write all of them, but there's so much to learn, and I hope that the audience can learn that you can look up these stories, and you can talk to these women, right? Anyways.
Addie did this wonderful thing in the script where she gave us a timeline. But then, oh, you didn't put it in here.
I took it out, I'm sorry. I didn't want to use color. I was worried that you would, so then I didn't want you to pay more money. There was pictures.
We had pictures of all the women that. So that was really lovely.
Here
I am like, yeah, leave this thing out. It's not there anymore.
Yeah, because all the characters are based on real women, and so I put the pictures of them so they could see them. I was also avoiding writing the last scene, so that's why. I was like, it was like the day before, and I was like, I've been avoiding it for so long. Why not just put pictures in instead? It's a lot more fun. So.
Any other questions? Yes.
What the whole thing with Valerie's husband, something about embezzlement, was that referring to something specific, or was that just like a vague, like, oh yeah, like bad stuff went to jail?
It's just supposed to mean that like he embezzled money at work, and then he went to jail. But yeah, as long as that was one thing I was always worried about. Is like I wanted to make it vague enough that it wasn't like exposition because they both know what's going on. But yeah, he embezzled money and went to jail.
What were some of the reasons why you decided to like switch it up at the end and let the baby live rather than let the baby die? Because you were considering that for a long time.
That was the big
question.
Well, yeah, because what I wanted to do was leave it an unknown because, like my mom said, it really was a question of control. Like if she would let go of control, and so I wanted it to be where like we didn't know what happened because God was in control. But no one was satisfied with that, including myself. And so I really, really struggled, and I just felt like I didn't want Alice to die. I wanted her to keep living, which I think is harder than if I let her die. And so then it was just a question of if the baby was going to die. And I liked the idea that the grandmothers, it was a loss either way. So it was kind of either a question of like, are the grandmothers going to say goodbye to their baby, or is Alice going to say goodbye to her baby? And so either way, there was a saying goodbye for a time. So I chose the grandmothers because I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. Sorry. So yeah, that's why. But I think hopefully it was clear that she would have been okay either way, had the baby lived or died.
Do you have any questions? I didn't prep you for that, so it's okay if you don't, but do you have any questions that you wanted to ask of them in terms of if things were clear or things you were wrestling with?
Yes, for sure. So, those in the audience who might not be members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or who are familiar with it, but maybe not active or whatever, was this play, did you feel uncomfortable at all with the play, not knowing it? Yeah, there you go. Were you uncomfortable, or did you feel preached to? Did you feel out of the loop? But I just love to know. Or even members of the church, I guess. But, yes.
I was nervous about that before I came in because I have seen like some stuff go kind of wild. But no, I thought you handled it really well. And honestly, a lot of it felt as much as it was just stories of American Christianity.
Good.
More so than even like specifically LDS. And I don't know if that's what you're going for or not, but yeah, I felt like I could be seeing this in a Baptist church or anything.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's good.
I mean, I'm personally not a member of the church, but I was like, to me, when I read the stories over and over, I feel like I'm just more than into like having emotional connect to all the stories instead of like, to me, it's not like lecture about the history of church. So I'm like, oh, I'm just learning how these women deal with their grief and their sorrows in their life.
Good. Yeah.
I definitely, like Andrew, was very nervous about it going in because I'm an ex-member of the church, and so it tends to be a very sensitive topic. The moment that I said, oh no, this is just art, this is just storytelling and not preaching, was when Maisie's character refused to pray with her son. That I said, oh, this isn't preaching, these are characters who grew up this way.
Yeah, thank you. That's good.
I was going to say the same thing. I am also an ex-member, and that was a big moment.
Good. Good.
Yeah, I also echo that too, as somebody who grew up in the church and is kind of like in and out, doesn't agree with everything, and I completely agree with that. And like the warm fuzzy before, with Franny, like swearing, and she grew up not in the church, and then she just happened to go over, and it's not a bad thing that Edith left in the end either, and not good or bad that Franny rejoined. It's just whatever works. So I thought that was great, and the Cheerios in the seat, like I can feel them.
That's true. That was the most real part of the show.
It really was.
Go ahead, back in there.
I also wanted to say I appreciate on the flip side that like you didn't shy away from the message at all of like God being in control. Like there was no like hesitancy, like you went for it, and I really liked that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
At some point during the workshop phase, you said like you didn't want this to be like a preaching the gospel play. You wanted to have these women and show how much their religion meant to you, and you really do that. It doesn't feel preachy. You're just showing that this religion means a lot to these women and showing more of their characters, and it's great.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you don't shy away from the hard topics either, which I think is great.
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar, which was also it's fine. Which is also just in the warm fuzzies, just like how you brought up topics that people have issues with. For me, it was like Franny and is it Valerie?
Yeah, it's
Valerie. Yeah, with Franny and Valerie, like how Franny was saying, sometimes the hardest part is like the other people, and like how they can be, because like I've totally seen that, and so yeah, so I loved that. It was very real.
I think it's clear that all the women have slightly different perspectives within their religion. And I liked also like the inclusion of Edith not wanting to pray, and then Ada doesn't really mention religion in her story, which I thought was interesting. Not that, whether she was against it or for it, but it just like wasn't part of that story for her, which I thought was cool, that we saw sometimes it was more important in their story to mention their religion and their like experience with it, and sometimes it wasn't.
I think I agree with everybody was saying, but I also like Andrew's just like you could like if you twisted the story in a way that was like, oh, we're gonna talk about the like women who like have a really strong relationship with like the Catholic Church, or really strong with the Baptist Church. Like you could like spin it and still feel like you're just watching a story about family history and church. Good. Regardless of what religion that like you put in the context, and like it's just the one that you know that like you're familiar with. And so like it's nice to get the whole scope of it and know like these stories in general for like religion and like family history and like the church is just like any church is just so important.
Good. Any final comments? We're closing in on time. Anything else from you, Addie? Questions?
I don't think so. You guys are great. Thank you for that, and for the people who read. Oh, jeez, you guys are really great. Thanks for destroying me. Just kidding.
Likewise.
So yeah, I just want to echo thank you so much much for coming. Thank you for our guest actors who joined us. We did have a good time playing 5 characters. I mean, not as much as mine. but just because I had twice as many characters, that's all. That's what I meant by that. That sounded like it could have gone and interpreted a couple different ways. Yes, so as I mentioned, we're going to have 2 more readings at the end of the semester, which we would certainly love to have you join us for that. Class members, I need you to stay. Everyone else, you're free to go. Thank you so much.